guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to share with you a review of the new Kylie Peach Palette, and I also want to compare it to the Too Faced Sweet Peach Palette. So if you guys want to see a review of this palette and see how it compares to the Too Faced palette, then just keep on watching. So the Kylie Royal Peach Palette is available at KylieCosmetics.com. Sometimes it is out of stock as I'm filming this, but I'm sure they're going to be restocking it, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be a permanent palette. It is available for $45 and it is 0.60 ounces and it has 12 shades. So this is the biggest palette out of all the Kylie palettes with 12 shades, a mirror, and a brush. This is the first Kylie palette that comes with a brush. So the previous palettes are 0.45 ounces for $42. So you're getting a better value right off the bat because you're getting more product for less money and also a brush. So this is how it compares to the size of a previous palette. I have the holiday palette here. The sizes of the pans are all the same, so you are getting just more product with the 3 additional shades. So I like that right off the bat, that it was definitely a better value with a brush, a mirror, and also 3 additional shades. So overall it is a little bit better than the previous palettes in terms of like how much you're getting for your money. And then I just wanted to compare it to the Sweet Peach palette, which is a $49 palette and it's 0.54 ounces. So this is more expensive by $4 and you're getting 0.06 ounces less product compared to this one. And there is 18 shades in this palette, so you are getting more shades, but you're just getting less product overall. So we'll get into swatches in a little bit, but just looking at the colors of both palettes, you do see some similarities, but there are some major differences too. Generally, the Sweet Peach palette has a lot more of a color range. You can literally see from the lightest to the darkest shade. It's basically from like a bone color to an almost black purple color. And the Kylie palette, basically the lightest shade to the darkest shade is like a range of 4 different shades. There are more like transition shades and lid colors in the Kylie palette, but in the Sweet Peach palette you're getting more like base colors and also like deeper colors for outer V, lower lash line, anything like that. So you are getting a bigger range of colors in the Sweet Peach palette, but you're getting more pops of color in the Kylie palette. You're getting some more bold shades and some brighter colors as well, while you're getting some more like warm, neutral, staple colors in the Sweet Peach palette. And basically the Sweet Peach palette was inspired by everything to do with peaches, like where they're found, how they grow, their core, the stem, anything that has to do with peaches, Bellini, like how they're cooked. So there's just like a lot more variety because they kind of work that peach theme to like every angle. And with the Kylie palette, I basically just see more of straight up peach colors, like oranges and browns. I think they just stuck to a very peach tone theme and what you think like traditionally when you think of peach colors. So that's my take on like the different ranges in both of the palettes. So those are the themes of both palettes. And getting into the packaging, I still have the Sweet Peach packaging because it's my favorite palette, so I've kept it for almost a year. So this is the outer packaging, and then this is the outer packaging of the Kylie Royal Peach palette, which is very Kylie. They're very different vibes. This is like really like cutesy and this is more Kylie. And the inner packaging is very different and it has like some pros and cons to both of them. So you have the metal case from the Too Faced Sweet Peach palette, and then you have the cardboard packaging, which is similar to all the other Kylie packaging. And there's some pros and cons with both. The Too Faced Sweet Peach palette, if you travel with it, you might get smushed like mine did, but the Kylie palette is a lot more sleek and compact for traveling. They're about the same size, but it's just a little bit easier to travel with a cardboard packaging, I find. And once you get into it, I will say that I prefer the Too Faced Sweet Peach palette. You can see that the colors are very like secure and stable in this palette, and you do get the mirror as well. But then with the Kylie palette, the inner packaging is not as secure. If I were to move my brush around in one of the transition shades, it ends up swirling the pan around. So I think that eventually the colors in here can pop out and I would have to re-glue them, which is definitely not something I want to worry about with a palette that I spent $45 on. So I think the Sweet Peach palette is definitely a better packaging. It's more worth it for the money. You're getting like a cheaper packaging with the Kylie palette. Alright, so before we get into swatches, something that's talked about by both of these palettes is the smell, which is something weird to bring up, but they are both known for their smell. The Too Faced Sweet Peach palette smells awesome. It smells like peaches. It makes me happy every time I use it because that smell just like lingers around me and it's just like a really pleasant smell. The Kylie Royal Peach palette has been like hyped up or made news about lately because of the smell, which is not pleasant at all. It's like a paint chemical-y smell, kind of like spray paint. And it's not something I honestly would have noticed had I not heard like people talk about it. I wouldn't have gone out of my way to smell it. It's not something that like if I open up I don't smell it at all. I literally have to like get in my palette and smell it. So while the paint smell is there, to me it's definitely not an overwhelming or overbearing scent. I know a lot of people were saying they open the palette and want to pass out because it smells so strong. I definitely don't find that to be the case, but it does smell like paint. You just have to kind of go out of your way to smell it, which I don't think is a big deal. I'm never gonna do that, and I don't smell it like on my face. It doesn't linger or anything like that. Alright, so now that we've gotten past the smells of both of the palettes, I'm going to swatch the Kylie Royal Peach palette. I'm going to do live swatches with this palette, and then I will be swatching the Sweet Peach palette off camera. I do have a whole swatch video and review video on this palette already, so I'll link it above me if you guys want to see more detailed swatches. But I'm just going to focus mostly on the swatches of the Royal Peach palette. So the swatches are a little tricky in this palette because on the back they are backwards, but I'm going to swatch it one row at a time, and I wrote it down for myself from K to E. And I'm going to start off with the top row. The first shade is Sorbet. And then the next shade is called Seashell. And then next we have Peachy. And next is the shade Royal. Then we have Queen Bee, and that's what's on my lid right now. And next we have Duke. So those are all the shades of the first row so far. Moving into the second row, the first shade is Duchess. You guys can see that like the pan is moving around a little bit. And then the next shade is Sandy. And then we have Mojito. And then we have North Star, Crush, and then the last shade is Cinnamon. So those are all the shades in the second row, and you can see they're a lot more sheer than what you see in the palette. I will get into the formula in a little bit, but overall these are all the colors. You get a couple pops of colors. You have a blue, a green, a purple, but the rest are mostly peachy and browns and oranges. So these are all the shades. I'm going to go ahead and swatch all the colors in the Sweet Peach palette. Alright guys, so these are the swatch comparisons. Let me know your first impressions by seeing these swatches side by side. I know I don't have the prettiest swatches in the world, but this is what we're working with. This is the Too Faced Sweet Peach palette and the Kylie Peach palette. Let me know what you guys think. So they are very different in terms of like the color ranges. Like I said, you get a lot more warm neutrals, a lot more of like a range from like super light, so this is the lightest shade, I couldn't even see it, to super dark with the Sweet Peach palette, whereas this is the lightest shade and this is the darkest shade in the Kylie palette. And you guys can probably tell the pigmentation is hands down way better in the Too Faced Sweet Peach palette in my opinion. Like if you look at some of the even like the matte shades up here, the shades are just more consistent. So when I went to swatch, it was just like a consistent swipe, versus with the peach palette, like you get some pigmentation but then it fades and becomes like more watered down or sheer. So overall the pigmentation is hands down way better. I like the formula a lot better in the Too Faced palette. But that doesn't mean that the Kylie palette is bad, because I think that the matte shades are more sheer, less pigmented, but I still had no trouble working them onto my eyes. And the shimmer shades kind of hold their own. Like I always go in with MAC Fix Plus for shimmer shades, and I didn't have any trouble with this shade here on my lid at all. I've used the other shimmer shades, these two as well, on my eyes. And while they are less pigmented, when I go to swatch it, like on my eyes, they applied just fine. I didn't have to make it work or anything. So the matte shadows especially are less pigmented from the Kylie palette. They're more sheer. But I didn't have to struggle to make them work. I didn't have to make them work at all. I didn't have to like go in and blend it out forever and ever. So I still found that these worked out really nicely for me. Even the shimmer shades still worked out really nicely. I actually used it on my eyes a couple times before I swatched it, and I was thinking that the swatches were going to be more pigmented because I did apply more pigmented on my eyes. I will say that if you have more texture around your eyes, like wrinkles, any kind of texture around your eyes, because they're not as creamy, it's just going to emphasize texture. It's not going to like smooth over your skin. So if you have any kind of texture around your eyes, you're probably not going to like the formula of this. And also, if you are like a beginner with eyeshadows, I would say that this palette is a lot better because you're getting a better range, and it's just an easier palette to work with because they're just creamier right off the bat. So I think that this palette, the formula is definitely better. That is the formula and swatch comparison. And honestly, like the swatches don't even look that much different in terms of pigmentation, at least to me. I don't know, you guys can let me know what you think. And I do like the shades, I think, in the Sweet Peach palette better because I really love like warm neutrals, browns. But I find that there's a lot of colors that I don't have in the Kylie palette. And even though these shades especially look so watered down and so sheer, like I used some of those shades on my eyes before. I've used all of these shades. I just haven't used these or the pink shades on my eyes. And I didn't have any trouble with them. I am wearing this shade and this shade in my transition and crease. So even though they basically like swatch like nothing, I was still able to like build it up in like 20 seconds or something. It wasn't like a big deal. So you're definitely get better pigmentation, better quality right off the bat, but you can get the exact same eye looks, the same quality, the same long wearing effect from both palettes. So it just depends on your preference. If like formula is a really big deal to you, then definitely go with the Sweet Peach palette. If you like a lot of neutrals, go for the Sweet Peach palette. If you like some more bold shades, if you want some more bold shimmer shades, then the Kylie palette will be what you would be interested in. I'm going to go ahead and take off these swatches, and then I'm going to do some swatch comparisons of these similar shades in both of these palettes. Alright, so I made a note of 6 shades from both of the palettes that are probably the most similar, so I could give you guys a swatch comparison if you guys see any similarities. And the first one is Cinnamon and the shade Summer Yum from the Too Faced palette. So I'm going to swatch both of them. And they are not dupes for each other, I can tell you that. This is the shade Cinnamon, and then Summer Yum is more of a brown tone color. So they are very similar transition shades, but you're going to get a more brown tone with Summer Yum. And then what do we got next? Puree and Sandy. So this is Puree in the Sweet Peach palette. And then this is the shade Sandy from the Kylie palette. And you can see the shade Sandy is a lot lighter. It's definitely not as deep as Puree. Then I wanted to swatch both of the green shades. Bless Your Heart is from the Too Faced palette. And then Mojito is from the Kylie palette. They are very different shades. Mojito is way lighter. It's more of a lime green color. And then Bless Your Heart is definitely a deeper green color. And then we have the lighter transition shades. We have Peaches and Cream, which is obviously my favorite shade, go-to shade in the Too Faced palette. And then we have Sorbet in the Kylie palette, which is this light peach. I hate that this is the lightest shade in the palette. I wish they had a lighter transition shade. And Sorbet, like I said, is a bit darker than Peaches and Cream. And then the last 2 colors I'm going to compare are the most similar from both of these palettes. We have Candied Peach, which is this orange shade. And then Peachy is the one I want to compare it to in the Kylie palette. So those are pretty similar. Peachy is just a little bit darker. And then the last 2 are probably the closest dupes in this palette. And I have Bellini from the Too Faced Sweet Peach palette, which is this pink shimmer shade. And then I'm comparing that to Seashell in the Kylie palette. So you guys can see those are pretty similar. Seashell is just a little bit lighter, but those are all both very pigmented, like pinky shades. So those are all the swatch comparisons. There's definitely not anything that's like the identical dupe of each other. These are a little bit most similar, and the rest are just like kind of different shades. They're pretty similar, but definitely not dupes to each other. So I don't think that you could get like the exact same look from both of the palettes. So if you have one, it's not like repeated shades into the next palette. So if you want to get both, then you have a reason to justify it because they are definitely not the same palette. Alright, so that's everything that I wanted to compare from both of the palettes. I just wanted to cover a bunch of different bases on both of the palettes and let you guys decide which one you thought was right for you. If you want to get both, you definitely can as well, because of course I did. And also I wanted to mention that the brush in the Kylie palette is actually really good. I heard a lot of people saying it wasn't. I found that it's a really good blending brush. I used it like to blend out my outer half of my lid. So I do think that the brush is pretty good for getting it with a palette for $45. So overall, the Too Faced palette definitely has a better formula and packaging. The Kylie palette has a better value. It is cheaper, has more product, and it comes with a brush. And then in terms of the colors, that's definitely up to you guys. Definitely let me know what your preference is. If you like the brighter, bolder shades in the Kylie palette, or you like the warm neutrals and having a bigger range of colors in the Too Faced Sweet Peach palette. I do love both palettes. I love the Sweet Peach palette to death. It's my favorite palette. I use it almost every day basically, especially now that it's been re-released. But I also really love the looks that I've come up with the Kylie palette. My eyeshadow today I really love, and I will put that on Instagram. Once I have it up, I will link it below as well, because I really like this look with the eyeshadow palette, and I like the looks that I've created so far with it. So both you can definitely get good looks with. It just depends on what you prefer, what formulas you prefer, and what colors you prefer. So definitely let me know all of that in the comments down below. And if you guys like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I'll talk to you guys soon in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.